More pupils are heading back to school today. Grade 6, 11 and some grade R's will be in class for the first time in almost 4 months. Basic Education Minister Angie Motshekga says they've learned lessons from the first group who resumed schooling last month. Our reporter Slindelo Masikane joins us now from Johannesburg. Very good morning to you, Slee. How's it playing out so far?
Morning, Jane. Yes, indeed. A new normal has set in for the second phase of learners that are returning to school. As I speak to you, I just want to move out of shot so I can give you a picture. We are outside Midrand Primary School, and this is where Basic Education Minister Angie Motshekga is expected to pay a visit to ensure that protocols are being observed. And as you can see, the learners are streaming in. In fact, I was speaking to a few parents earlier on. I'm going to try and grab one or two when I see them. And of course, the sentiment is many of them are quite nervous. But as you can see, that Midrand Primary School seems to be quite ready to receive the second phase of learners, being grade 6s here in particular. And as you can see, regulations are being observed. There are sanitizers outside the entrance, which is clearly labeled, and we do have staff receiving the learners, ensuring that social distancing is being maintained. There are markings on the ground, in fact squares, to ensure that learners are keeping social distancing. And as they move past the entrance, there are even more protocols that are being observed. In fact, their temperatures as well are being taken. And as you can see, that so far it does seem as though the Gauteng region in particular will be ready to accept more learners, Jane.
All right, so the Minister, Angie Motshekga, was saying that many lessons have been learned from the first phase. I'm wondering how that's playing out at the school and what they've learned.
Certainly, I think we're going to see exactly what kind of implementations are going to be taken in terms of the rotations. We know that not all learners will be at school at the same time. There will be a rotational system that's going to be used. So certain grades will come in on Mondays or Tuesdays or Wednesday. What we do know is that matriculants in particular are the only learners that will be attending school on a daily basis. But I think one of the concerns or one of the issues that have been raised by the minister is that what we are seeing happening in communities is starting to trickle down into the schools in terms of regulations not being adhered to. And so I think the call right now is to ensure that parents are ensuring that their children are well aware of how the virus is transmitted and how they can keep themselves safe, especially inside the school where, you know, they don't have they don't have control over their children. But many of the parents as well that I spoke to saying that they really don't have that particular option of homeschooling their children. Many of them need their children to go to school because they themselves need to work.
Yeah, that is one of the big issues, isn't it? We'll be speaking to the Minister in the next hour anyway, but thanks for that, Slee. In the Western Cape, the Provincial Education Department says its schools are ready. The eNCA reporter Monique Mortlock is visiting schools in Cape Town this morning. She joins us now. What's the state of readiness there, and are people nervous?
Good morning, Jane. I'll be speaking to several schools, as you've mentioned today, those that say they are ready and those that say they simply aren't, and are asking for the department, for the provincial government and for national government to only reopen schools after the peak here in the Western Cape when it comes to those COVID-19 infections. I'm standing here at Montevideo Primary School in Elsies River, where it's expected that a group of parents and the governing body members will be picketing a bit later. They will slowly start arriving from about 7:30 onwards up until 9 o'clock. And what we are expecting to do is to chat to the principal, Mr. Daniels, just to chat about whether the school is indeed ready for those other grades to return. Last week the school had sent a letter to parents urging parents not to send their children to school at least until after the Western Cape has reached the peak of infections and have come after that. And last week, if you remember, I was also at various pickets held by teachers, principals and parents, calling for schools to remain closed until we've reached that peak, and it's expected that these pickets will continue in the coming days.
And Monique, I should imagine that those who are not keen to go back to school also fear being left out, left behind.
And this is something that I have asked the principals, the teachers at these various pickets, asking them whether they are in calling for the schools to remain closed, whether the infrastructure is in place to allow for learning, for teaching and learning to take place at homes. And what the principals told me is, if government gives them enough support to allow them to close schools, or at least not open it for these other grades as we are going to be seeing today, then they will definitely have the necessary infrastructure in place, whether it be via social media or online learning, just to ensure that teaching does continue. But what I've heard from all of the principals, from all of the teachers who are against the reopening of the schools for other grades, is that the safety of learners, the safety of staff members at schools are a lot more important for them, are higher on the priority list than just continuing business as normal. But like I said before, I will not only be speaking to them and organizations such as SATU that have thrown their weight behind this call for or against the reopening of schools, but I'll also be chatting to principals, to educators, to parents who are for schools opening, who are for the normalizing of the school curriculum, of getting back into the swing of things, those who say they are ready, they are prepared with the necessary COVID-19 hygiene protocols. All right.